I'm me. You're you. I have a mug, so I must be knowledgeable. Let's talk about the space race. Alright, so the space race is now in a start. So just to narrow things down, we're going to focus on the U.S.S.R. because I only got 6 minutes. So let's do this, shall we? The main man for the U.S.S.R. space race was a man by the name of Sergei Korolev. October 4th, 1957, the Soviets sent up Sputnik 1. November 3rd, 1957 rolls around and Sputnik 2 is launched, except the thing with this one is there is actually a living thing on board. Laika, a stray dog from Moscow, Laika, the dog, is put on board and it successfully launches into space. However, sadly, 2 hours after, Laika passes away. So, January 2nd, 1959 rolls around, and Luna 1 is launched. It was the first thing to get out of Earth's orbit, so that's pretty cash money. September 12th, 1959, Luna 2 is launched to the moon, except they crash it into the moon. Never heard from again, because that's what happens when you crash things into the moon. October 24th, 1960, disaster strikes as Marshal Mitrofan Netherland, I hope to God I didn't pronounce that wrong, in an effort to launch a Mars probe by the 43rd Bolshevik Revolution. Netherland cuts corners. It is known as the Netherland disaster for a reason, because he kills over 100 people because of it, him included. And the inferno was so great that the only reason why he was identified as dead was because a gold star was left intact on his uniform. It was a pretty horrific thing. April 12th, 1961. Now this is a pretty monumental day, as Yuri Gagarin becomes the first man to go into space. He launched in Vostok 1. May 25th, 1961, he makes an announcement to say that
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
So this pretty much sets the tone and the pace for the rest of the race. And Sergei Korolev is watching from the shadows. He's watching the Americans, so he knows that this is going to happen, and he knows what they're trying to do. So he's got this in mind, and he starts developing, a mindset to set a rocket to space with people on it as well, because he's like, I'm gonna get there first. June 16th, 1963, Valentina Tereshkova launches in Vostok 6, becoming the first woman to get in space flights. For 1964, lunar race starts speeding up. Sergei Korolev was trying his best to get funding and approval for his moon program, but was having a few difficulties. The Soviet government was kind of being a poopy head to him. March 18th, 1965, this is when another monumental achievement is achieved by the Soviets. Alexei Leonov becomes the first man to walk in space. January 14th, 1966 rolls around. This is another F day. Sergei Korolev, the leader of the Soviet program, dies during surgery. This is pretty big, because the big leader of the entire Soviet space program just perished. April 23rd, 1967, Soyuz 1, which, by the way, translates to Union in Russian. Yeah, real patriotism. Soyuz 1 pretty much the Russians' equivalent to the Apollo program, is launched. January 16th, 1969 rolls around. So one last hurrah for the Soviets, because Soyuz 4 and Soyuz 5 dock become the first shuttles to trade crews. So this is pretty much the last significant achievement that the U.S.S.R. gets for about a year or so. January 20th, 1969, the day that 3 Americans set foot on the moon. Nobody has even really attempted to go to the moon, at least during space race era. Russia just completely stopped. They don't care about it. At some point from 1965 to 1971, 4 other countries actually unintendedly mix into the space race. These countries are France, Japan, China, and the UK. They all launched their own satellites. April 19th, 1971, Salyut 1, sorry, I probably really botched that one, is launched, and it becomes the first space station, ever to be launched by humans. July 17th, 1975, the last day of the space race. You want to know why? Because one of the most magical acts of all time becomes a thing. Apollo 18 and Soyuz 19 dock, ending the space race. Nothing to end a feud like some friendly docking. So, the real pressing question, why does all this matter? And what happened afterwards? Well, what happened afterwards, the U.S.S.R. still, goes to the National Space Station and stuff, and they also take American pilots as well. Why does this matter in the grand scheme of things? Why should anybody care? But to you and me, who, it's kind of like, well, why does it matter to us? Well, you wouldn't even be able to see this video without this, the internet. Without the space race, it wouldn't exist, because satellites and stuff.